Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to PACT's Capital Conference for 2017. Please welcome Mr. Dean Miller, President and CEO, PACT.
All right, I'm going to talk loudly so that everybody out in the hall starts filtering in. Welcome to the 24th annual, that's right, 24th annual PACT Capital Conference, the longest running and we think best capital conference in the East. Many thanks to all of you for supporting PACT and all of our programs and initiatives throughout the year. The Capital Conference is the pinnacle of our calendar year and truly brings out the entire entrepreneurial ecosystem. A special welcome to our out-of-town guests. We hope you enjoy the conference and gain a greater awareness of the vibrancy of our Philadelphia entrepreneurial community and hopefully invest in a company or two. A special thanks to PACT's founding leaders for the depth and breadth of their support. And finally, thank you to our 2017 conference sponsors. We could not produce this event without all of your active engagement, from sponsorship to company recruitment and selection, to speaker recruitment and the Lion's Den. Please join me in a round of applause. Our role at PACT is to connect entrepreneurs and investors, companies and customers, mentors and mentees. We have formalized this role into four core programs: Capital Connect, Customer Connect, Mentor Connect, and our newest program, Talent Connect. We have listened to our entrepreneurial members and designed these four programs to help you grow and strengthen your business, and in turn, elevate our region into a top-tier region for high-growth entrepreneurs and the investors that back them. To learn more about these programs and to stay in touch with all that PACT does, please join us on the social media channel of your choice, or all of them. We've got LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you're on Twitter, connect with us and follow along on #PactCapCon. You have my permission right now to stop listening to me and sign up for at least one of these. Not kidding. I know your phone is in front of you anyway. All right. While you're on your phone, please log into our conference app. This is the source for all great info on the conference, and it is also the source for valuable one-on-one meetings, which you can both initiate and accept. There is no limit to one-on-one meetings. If you need help, see one of our team members at the registration desk. All right. Are you ready for a great conference? I said, are you ready for a great conference? All right. It is now my pleasure to introduce the 2017 PACT Capital Conference Chairman and hosts, partners at Morgan Lewis, Andy Hamilton, and Jeff Bodel.
Well, shake it up, baby, now. Shake it up, baby. Twist and shout. Twist and shout. Come on, come on, come on.
Thank you, Dean, and welcome, everyone. It's been my pleasure to serve with my partner Jeff Bodel as co-chairs of the 2017 PACT Capital Conference on behalf of Morgan Lewis. Morgan Lewis has more than 2,200 lawyers, patent agents, benefits advisors, regulatory scientists, and other specialists in 30 offices across North America, Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. The firm provides comprehensive litigation, corporate, transactional, regulatory, intellectual property, and labor and employment legal services to clients of all sizes, from globally established industry leaders to just conceived startups. Our firm has a long history of working with startups and remains committed to working with startups and supporting entrepreneurship in this region, the country, and the world. I'd like to thank all members of our Morgan Lewis team, specifically Jeff Bodel, who has served as co-chair of the conference with me, and to all of our other partners, associates, and staff that have volunteered their time to help make this event special throughout the planning process. In particular, thanks to our marketing team, led by Valerie Calderon, along with Maureen Ruckelshaus, Caroline Cranch, Eric Scott, and Chris Chang. It's been a tremendous effort, demonstrative of our firm's dedication to collaboration with our clients, friends, and colleagues. We have a great conference planned with terrific presenting companies and lots of great content. This would not have been possible without the efforts of our industry track chairs. Vice Chairs of Technology, Tina Offiero and Caitlin Johnson of Safeguard Scientifics. The Healthcare Track, Tom Olenczak and Eric Steiger of IBX. In the early stage track, Ellen Weber of Robin Hood Ventures and Jason Bannon from Ben Franklin Technology Partners. Of course, it has been great working with Dean and the rest of the PACT team, including Cheryl Jarvis-Johnson, Jennifer Cohen, Kim Tusky, Danielle Pinto, Amanda Nardi, LaToya Hall, and Diane Strunk. Thank you so much for all of the work you do to put on a conference like this. Finally, thank you to PACT's executive, steering, and planning committees, and to our over 70 sponsors for their support of this event. We could not do it without you. And now over to my partner, Jeff Bodel, who will introduce our first session.
Thanks, Andy. Welcome to the first session of the conference. I'm going to talk about some logistical matters, and then we can just dive right into the session. But first, I wanted to give a special welcome to all the entrepreneurs in the room. Thank you to all of you for fighting the fight, and for those who aren't presenting this year, make sure to get to know the entrepreneurs in the room because they'll probably be presenting next year, and hopefully then we'll be hearing about successful exits for them. Another reminder to download the PACT app, and then some logistics, make sure to keep your cell phone on vibrate. You can leave it on, and we want you to leave it on and interact with the app and really interact with social media, but to the extent that you can put it on vibrate, that would be great. As a reminder, the app really has the agenda, the profiles of all the presenting companies, all of the sponsors, and really everything related to the conference. So you can't download it soon enough. By show of hands, who's downloaded the app already? All right, we're doing pretty good. So this afternoon's program includes a couple of different things. We begin it with some exciting lightning talks. We'll then have a variety of breaks so that you can continue the networking, which is really the most valuable aspect of the conference. And then we'll tap things off with a great keynote speaker, followed by some more networking and a cocktail reception. Lightning talks are starting to become a steady feature of the conference, and what they really are is a series of talks from leading experts, and this year the focus of the talks is going to primarily center around success through collaboration, inclusion, and access. We'll first begin with a brief Q&A with Polina Marinova, who's the associate editor at Fortune and the author of Term Sheet, and she'll be joined on stage by Dean Miller. And then Polina is also going to come back after our first break to moderate some discussion with our lightning speakers. Our speakers will include Dan Goldsmith, who's the Senior Executive, Software Consulting and Life Sciences of Veeva, Laura Wang, who's the Assistant Professor of Management and Entrepreneurship at the Wharton School, and then Andrew Yang, who's the founder of Venture for America. All sessions are right here, so you don't have to go anywhere. After these sessions, we're going to have a quick break, and then we're going to have a moderated discussion with our lightning speakers. And then last but not least, what I'm personally looking forward to the most is a keynote address from Anita Elbers, who's the award-winning teacher and scholar at the Executive Educational Program for the Business of Entertainment, Media, and Sports at Harvard Business School. And thank you to our friends at Blank Rome for sponsoring Anita's keynote session. After the keynote, day one will conclude with a cocktail reception. This is sponsored by Eisner Amper and RCCB Law, and that'll be held right outside in the foyer following the conclusion of this program at around 5:30 p.m. And thanks again to everybody in this room for your support of the PACT Capital Conference and your support of our entire region and our entrepreneurs and all that everybody's doing to really make the ecosystem a success. But also as a reminder, you don't want to miss tomorrow. Today's just a great kickoff, but tomorrow is really the main event with a lot of company presentations, industry packed panels, more networking, culminating with the gala reception, which is really the networking event of the year, sponsored by our friends at Grant Thornton and Pepper Hamilton. And then what we've also added as a new feature to this year's conference is Customer Connect. Our technology and healthcare tracks have really put together some exciting combinations of both large companies and emerging businesses who will interact with each other, and you really hear in the process what large companies are looking for in terms of innovation and how emerging businesses can sell and collaborate with them. So with that, I want to go ahead and turn it back over to Dean Miller.
So it is now my pleasure to introduce Polina Marinova. Please join me in welcoming Polina. So Polina hails from New York City. She's down visiting here in Philadelphia with us and is the associate editor, as Jeff shared, of Fortune and the author of Term Sheet. By show of hands, and I can't really see these hands, who subscribes to Term Sheet?
So it's just on Fortune. We have a bunch of newsletters, one written by our editor-in-chief, another written by another editor who does the Most Powerful Women channel, and then Term Sheet, which you should definitely subscribe to.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Polina is going to come back and moderate a session, but I've asked her to share a little bit of insight. You know, Polina spends her days really focused on the venture capital and private equity industry. And Polina, one of the things that I wanted you to comment on was private market valuations. You know, we have seen in the public markets a significant increase in values over the past year plus, and most all of that has to do with public technology stocks. I heard something today where they were talking about the fact that many of these public technology stocks, we're going to hear from an executive from one of them a little bit later this afternoon, actually have earnings, unlike 1999. So there is a lot to sustain and at least justify those valuations. The question I have for you is the private company.
Yeah.
We have seen huge amounts of capital go into private companies in large blocks, oftentimes delaying or eliminating the path to an IPO. And these valuations are outrageous in some regards. What's your perspective?
Right. So basically, it does go back to venture capital and the private companies. I recently wrote about this in Term Sheet, but we've seen that, especially in 2017, venture capital firms are investing in fewer companies, but the investments are much bigger. And they're usually later stage companies, meaning that why would you exit, why would you IPO if you can keep fundraising and keep growing, et cetera, versus just doing an IPO. And when you have companies like SoftBank investing crazy amounts in WeWork, we talked about, it's just like there's no reason. Recently, I wrote about Magic Leap. I don't know if you guys know that company. I mean, they've raised so much money. They're valued, they raised more than $1 billion just in funding. They're valued at, I don't know, $6 billion or something. And it's just that while it's great, who knows what the product is? It hasn't even been released to the public yet. Nobody's interacted with this thing, as far as I know, publicly. So as these companies keep raising money, venture capitalists kind of have to stop and be like, you can't exactly do due diligence on a promise, on a vision. The way I kind of got my feet wet with crazy valuations is I recently came across this company out of Atlanta called itself the Uber for Trash. And they recently raised a lot of money, was valued at over $1 billion without any traditional VC firms in it. Most investors were celebrities or politicians, a few family offices. So you look at that and you're like, this is a company that's raised more than $200 million, just became a unicorn out of Atlanta. And so I was just kind of confused about the valuation. I don't know much about the product, so I started talking to people. I started talking to investors who looked at the company but ended up passing. I talked to the company itself. And just looking at some of the financials that the private companies provide investors and how the numbers change, you can't really pin anything down. And it's just like, I don't know, how you value something where you can't pin down the number of users, the revenue number even. So here we are.
If you have not yet subscribed to the Term Sheet, you should. Polina does an amazing job of collecting all the deals for the day, but also writing very insightful analysis on a couple of key stories each day. So thank you again for being here with us. Talking about valuations and how investors make decisions, it's time for our first speaker of the day. Professor Laura Huang, as you heard, is from the Wharton School and writes on investor decision making. how they do it, the biases they bring to that process. So please join me in welcoming Laura Huang.
Thrilled to be here with you here today. As Dean mentioned, I do research at the Wharton School on investment decisions. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the research that I've done and how it relates to biases, diversity, and the entrepreneurial mindset. Right, this is something that we hear a lot about these days, how we think about investors, how we think about entrepreneurs, and the decision they're making. And so what I like to do is start with this. Right, you may have seen this for lots of different activities out there, golf, tennis, lots of different occupations. And I think the one about entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs is particularly relevant. Right, so if you look at the first picture over here, what my mom thinks I do, when I started my first company, my mom totally thought I was Mark Zuckerberg. Right, she didn't know what entrepreneurship was. She was an immigrant, so she had no idea what entrepreneurship even meant. So she would go to all of her friends and she'd say, how do I know whether or not my daughter is doing a good job? She's an entrepreneur, she was an engineer by training, did what I said, and now she's this disobedient child who decided to be an entrepreneur. How do I know whether or not she's doing a good job? And all of her friends who knew equally the same amount about entrepreneurship would say to her, well, she's doing a good job if she's IPOing. If she's IPO'd, you know she's done a good job. And so on a weekly basis, she would call me and she'd say, did you brush your teeth today? Did you IPO today? Right? Trying to see whether or not her daughter was doing a good job as an entrepreneur. My friends from college and I, every year we have a girls' getaway where we take a long weekend and we have a trip, and we're pulling out our calendars and we're always saying, okay, what weekend works this year? And when we're doing this, they're always like, oh, we can't do it this time because we've got this big conference coming, or we've got this big meeting coming, or it's tax season, and then it's, oh, but Laura can do any time. She's an entrepreneur. Right? And so we tend to think that entrepreneurs are people lounging by the pool. This is another persona that we have. Society. We now have this glorified version of entrepreneurs, right? They're these sexy badasses flying around on private jets. They're in private yachts, right? That's the glorified version we have of entrepreneurs. Investors. What did investors think that I did, right? They wanted me to be this big bad dude smoking a cigar, because they wanted to invest in that persona. And then we have what I thought I did, which was solving really complex algorithms, saving the world, putting a dent in the universe, something really disruptive. But what I really did was sit by the phone, or nowadays scrolling through your iPhone, checking to see if a customer has gotten to you, or a supplier, or a potential partner, or an investor, or what have you. Right? So when we think about entrepreneurship, we have all of these different personas. We have lots of different ways that we think about entrepreneurs and think about entrepreneurship. And so what happens is that we use a lot of these signals and cues that we have available in our environment in order to make these judgments, in order to think about what persona we think entrepreneurs should be. We have these views of what successful entrepreneurs should look like. And so some of these cues that we use, right, are things like what Paul Graham was quoted as saying in 2013, which was, one quality that's a really bad indication is a strong foreign accent. I'm not sure why. It could be that there are a bunch of subtle things entrepreneurs have to communicate and can't if you have a strong accent. Or it could be that anyone with half a brain would realize you're going to be more successful if you speak idiomatic English, so they must just be clueless if they haven't gotten rid of their strong accent. Right? So Paul Graham, co-founder and partner of Y Combinator, was quoted as saying this. Now, bless his heart, he then decided to say, he tried to say, okay, wait, no, this is taken out of context. So then a month later he says, it's fine to have an accent, but you must be able to make yourself understood. Okay, I'm not sure if that helped or didn't help. But so I was sort of curious, what does this actually mean? So I did some research, and I studied non-native accent, right? So I looked at folks who do not have a standard American accent. And I found that there's no difference in terms of how they're able to communicate, right? So I asked folks, do you understand? So all these questions around whether or not they actually understood, with people with native accents versus non-native accents were actually communicating. And people were just as likely to get the material, to get what they were communicating. This was across a number of different fields, including interview contexts in large organizations, including investor contexts where they were looking for funding. Now, the interesting thing is that what I found was that these people with non-native accents were less likely to get funding. And it wasn't because of communication. It was because of things like interpersonal influence or political skill. So what happened was those who had a non-standard accent were much more likely to be deemed as having low interpersonal influence and low political skills. So investors would get together and they would say, isn't it important to have strong interpersonal influence? And everyone would be like, yeah, of course, we need strong interpersonal influence. And it just so happened that those people who had non-native accents were those who were most likely to get dinged based on interpersonal influence. Okay, so we have these subtle signals and cues that are driving what's happening, right? And when we think about bias, the first thing we tend to think about is gender, right? In this world, we tend to think about gender bias, so I'm gonna go there, but I'm not gonna talk a lot about it because there's lots of different forms of bias. There's lots of subtle signals and cues that we're looking at, but there's absolutely bias. So another paper of mine, another research topic, looked at how investors prefer entrepreneurial ventures pitched by attractive men. Okay, this is a real article. So some of my friends are like, did you just write an Onion article? No, this is in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, right? Investors prefer entrepreneurial ventures pitched by attractive men. So not only is there an overwhelming tendency for investors to prefer pitches pitched by women, but even attractive women don't get an extra boost, but attractive men get an extra boost, right? So if you're an attractive man, you're doing better than unattractive men and women, right? And so our hypothesis was, well, women spend so much time getting ready, they spend so much time on how they look. Could it be that they can inoculate against some of this bias, right, when they're attractive? Well, actually, no. They're just as unlikely to get venture financing. All right, so what happens is we end up chasing all of this data, okay? When we're making investments, we're looking for signals. We're doing due diligence. We're looking for data, we're looking for hard numbers, we're looking for financials, we're looking for market size. But what ends up driving our decisions is often these subtle signals and cues that help us frame and help us think about all of this hard information. So I wanted to then see, well, is this really bias? Because bias can be something that's very, very complicated. And I had this thought, right, because I'm a pretty optimistic person, that no, actually investors aren't being biased. This is something very implicit, right? What they're trying to do is they're trying to make the best possible investments they can, right? They want the ROIs. They want to find those home runs. So it's not that they're purposely trying to invest in certain types of people, but they're actually seeking out what they think is going to be the most effective investments. So I started doing some research on what's happening, and I had this thought that what happens a lot of the time is that when people give pitches, what's happening in our minds is that we're thinking about all of the risks. We're thinking about all of the questions that we still have, right? And so somebody gives a pitch and we're like, is this a big enough market? Or, are they really committed? And we have all of these things that we're trying to figure out. And then we start engaging and asking questions and trying to check off all of these boxes. And I thought, might it be that when investors are asking men about these things that they're trying to figure out, that they might be asking it in a different way than they're asking it to women, right? Perhaps they're trying to be nicer and not be aggressive towards the women. Or perhaps they're trying to ask it using a certain language. And so what happens is that men are able to then check off these boxes, these male entrepreneurs, but females don't have the opportunity to check off those same boxes. And so then when it comes time to invest, we feel more comfortable with the level of risk in these male entrepreneurs than female entrepreneurs. And so what I found was indeed what happens is that male and female entrepreneurs get asked different questions from both male investors as well as female investors. Male investors, and some of you may have seen this research, male entrepreneurs are more likely to get asked promotion-focused questions, right? Things like, how do you plan to monetize this? How big do you think this can be? What's your target market? How can you grow this? Where female entrepreneurs are more likely to get asked prevention-focused questions, questions that have to do with risk. Things like, how many daily and monthly active users do you have? Do you really think you can get to this two-sided, you can attack this two-sided marketplace? Is this a defensible business? All of these sorts of things. So that when it comes time to invest, it's not necessarily that there's this natural bias, but there's these implicit questions, this implicit risk that we still see certain entrepreneurs as having. Now, we see this effect not just based on gender, but also based on race, ethnicity, lots of different other factors. But this research in particular, the published version, is just the gender piece. So when we think about bias, what is it really about? Right? It's really about the fact that time, advice, and money are not doled out equally. There's these perceptions of unfairness at an individual level. The issue is that this is not an individual phenomenon, right? The actual meritocracy versus favoritism of it is impacting the individual entrepreneur. But on a system level, if we move from the individual level to the system level, this is actually impacting our entire ecosystem. The reason why this bias and this disadvantage is impacting our entire ecosystem is because of things like this. Right? Theranos. Almost everyone in this room has probably heard about Theranos. We have this fabulous female entrepreneur who drops out of school to start this amazing business. Right? Theranos is this business where from just a single prick of the finger, they can take that blood and they can diagnose all sorts of disease states. Right? But what they realized, however, was that a lot of that data was falsified. Okay? That it couldn't actually diagnose all those disease states. Now, if we think about what's actually underlying the biological, what's happening here, most health practitioners would actually realize that the blood is very different. The blood that you're taking, you're drawing out of your veins, is really different from the blood that's reaching the end of your finger. Right, so the blood at your end of your finger also is going through fat tissue and it's going through all of this sort of stuff. I'm not a doctor, so I'm kind of half making some of this up, but it's going through all this sort of, stuff, and then it gets to the end of your finger, and it's only able to diagnose things like sugar levels, right, glucose, all of those sorts of things. But we were so enamored by the signals we were getting, all of these people who had invested and believed in Elizabeth Holmes, all of these sorts of signals that Theranos, right, was a big deal. Or things like this, Juicero, right? How many of you have heard of Juicero before? Okay, how many of you have not heard of Juicero before? Okay, great. How many of you have heard of, okay, just going back, now that I'm realizing, how many of you have never heard of Theranos before? Okay, all right, so Juicero, we have this company, right, where the main value proposition is we want fresh juice and fresh squeezed juice and fresh squeezed vegetables in the comfort of our own kitchen, right? We're like, people are nodding. They're like, yeah, that would be awesome, like fresh squeezed juice every day, right? So they have this machine that you can put in your kitchen and you can squeeze out fresh squeezed juice every day, okay? Pretty awesome. Now, the problem is that we have this population of investors, right? We have this ecosystem where only 2% of females are getting funded, even though 38% of them are owning businesses. Only 7% of VCs are women. Most VCs and investors are located in one of 5 large metropolitan cities, most of them concentrated in the Valley. Right? And you have all these people sitting around this room, Google Ventures, all these folks, Kleiner, and they're all like, yeah, this is a really big problem. We don't get fresh squeezed juice in our kitchen, okay? So they realized later on that this $700 machine, which was later priced down to $400, you didn't actually need the machine to squeeze the juice. You could actually just squeeze it with your hands. Okay? And this machine was one of those things where you would put a capsule in, sort of like those coffee machines. You'd put it in and it would squeeze it out and it cost $400. And they realized, hey, somebody figured out that you can just squeeze these packets with your hand, So you can buy these $8 packets and just get direct fresh squeezed juice. So two things that we missed because we weren't looking at the system level, right? Number one, it's not such a huge pain point to have fresh squeezed juice in your kitchen, right? Not a lot of people want to be spending $400 plus $8 capsules in order to get this. Number two, when you take them out of that mindset of needing this device and putting it in there and squeezing it out, that the normal person realized you could just squeeze this with your hands and do away with this machine. Theranos, Juicero, these are the types of problems that we encounter when we take that bias and we move that to a system level. When we don't have that representation, when we don't have that diversity of thought. It's not just diversity in terms of gender or age or race and ethnicity. It's that diversity of thought that we lose. We lose out on the types of opportunities that we should be investing in, and we invest in the types of opportunities that we think are going to be massive and huge, but end up just being able to be squeezed by your hands. All right, so what do we do about that? Well, sometimes we all have this entrepreneurial mindset. That's why we're here. Right? We're very, very capable of thinking about this mindset in terms of this entrepreneurial mindset. We're here to think about innovation and disruption and all these sorts of things. But we don't think about innovation and disruption in terms of the composition of people that we're with in this ecosystem. Right? So thinking about how are we going to compose a group that thinks disruptively, that thinks innovatively, right? That has this sort of it's not just about inclusion, but it's also about diversity in terms of thought, in terms of how we're going to be able to do this. That's what we do in entrepreneurship. That's what we tell entrepreneurs to do. We tell them to go out and be gritty and figure something out and go and pivot and do all these sorts of things. But we don't do that ourselves when we're looking at the composition, right? We talk lots about pitching. Almost every single conference, almost every single networking event that we have now is centered around some sort of a pitch event. But pitch events are designed for us to look for those subtle signals and cues. That's how we make those evaluations, because we can't get to the meat of something. Right? So how can we take these sorts of events and make them not only about these subtle signals and cues, but also getting to other things that are much more substantive? How can we take that Q&A session and make sure that we're implementing ways that we can get at those prevention-focused questions as well as those promotion-focused questions so that we can, again, be more inclusive but yet disruptive? What's your unfair advantage? Right? This is something that investors are asking entrepreneurs all the time. What is it about you in particular that allows you to go and approach this market at this particular time? What is your unfair advantage in this? That's what every investor wants, right? They want to spot that diamond in the rough that's got that unfair advantage. How can we actually take that and recognize that those who have a certain gender or a certain race, ethnicity, or so on and so forth, how does that distinctive advantage allow them to arbitrage that opportunity, right? How can we actually invest in those and perhaps think about those opportunities, again, in a disruptive, innovative way? Finally, cognitive positioning, right? If you want advice, ask for money. Flip that over. If you want money, ask for advice. Now, this is a little bit simplified, okay? And you may have heard this before, but it goes back to how do we actually think about the ways in which we approach things? We tend to think about things in a very linear way. But when we think about them in a linear way, we're going to use those signals and those cues in a very, very linear way as well. Taking one signal, like gender, and attributing it to this person perhaps is less competent, but very warm, but less competent. How can we reposition cognitively and make sure that we're doing things like thinking about how advice actually leads to money, or money leads to advice, or investing in certain people, or looking at certain opportunities will lead to something counterintuitive? And finally, pivoting, right? A central part of every entrepreneurial journey. It's about pivoting. But yet we're not really pivoting in what we're doing in terms of looking at inclusion. We're doing things like, well, we need to work on inclusion and we need to work on diversity. So isn't it great? We've hired 30 people, and out of those 30 people, those 16 of them were female. Well, yes, that's great, but are those the right 16? That's a really important question. We have all of these initiatives around diversity and around inclusion, but how are we actually thinking about them? Are we pivoting on those? Or are we kind of just following and saying things like half of our hires need to be female, half our hires need to be people of color, and so on and so forth? So I leave you with those thoughts and thinking about how bias is not just about diversity. Diversity is not just about bias. Individual level effects are not just about individuals, but also system level effects and vice versa. Thanks so much.
Laura's research has been recognized nationally and beyond. She was named one of the 40 under 40 by Poets and Quants magazine, which covers the business school market. I think I have the perfect answer for the next business now. It's going to be Juice Ceranos, which will inject juice right into your veins. Please, another round of applause for Laura Huang. Our second lightning speaker hails from New York City, where in 2011, he founded Venture for America, a highly successful program with some big-time backers. The program is for top college graduates to work for 2 years in startup and early-stage companies in emerging U.S. cities. Newsflash, Philly is one of their top cities. The goal, 100,000 new jobs by 2025. He left the helm of VFA this summer to pursue other interests, including writing a book due out early in 2018 that you should definitely follow. It is called The War on Normal People. Please welcome Andrew Yang.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Dean. So how many of you all work in technology, entrepreneurship, investing, professional services? Right, so I'm going to try and smush two presentations together. It'll be a lot of fun. So the first presentation's on this book that I'm working on that'll be out in the spring called The War on Normal People. So the question I have for you, and you can feel free, please, to shout it out. What are the 5 most common jobs in the United States? Retail, that's right. That's number 2. Teacher, not on the list. Hospitality, yes. Tourism. Military, healthcare, education. So I'll give you guys a couple data points that will help. The average hourly wage is $17, and the median income in the United States is about $32,000. So some of those answers were right on. A couple of them don't come to mind immediately. So here are the top 5 job categories in the United States. Office and administrative support's number 1, sales and retail is number 2, food service and food prep is number 3, materials transportation, which is truck driving, is number 4, and production, which is manufacturing, is number 5 still. So you all work in an industry that I also sort of work in. What do these 5 jobs have in common, aside from the fact that they're not super lucrative? They are going to disappear. That's right. This is a pizza printing robot, which I'm told is quite tasty. The other ones we also have GIFs for, but I decided not to include because you've all seen the self-driving trucks and the bots that do what clerks used to do, et cetera, et cetera. So where the rubber hits the road, literally and figuratively, is truck driving, which is the most common job in 29 states. The stats are shocking to many people, but there are 3.5 million of them, 94% male, age 49. The incentives to automate trucking are massive, $168 billion a year, plus thousands of lives saved. So this is going to be the irresistible force meeting the immovable object, where the irresistible force is technology and $168 billion a year in savings, and the immovable object is 3.5 million middle-aged men who are not super adaptive. So that's what we all have to look forward to in the next 2 to 12 years. So this is what my book is about. It's called The War on Normal People. We are automating away millions of American jobs, and society is not meaningfully responding or adapting. So this book's going to come out March 27th. It's available for pre-order now. So if this is of interest to you, and I know a lot of you work in these industries, please do check it out because the data is not great. And I've now been to DC, I've been to Silicon Valley, been into New York, and obviously here in Philadelphia and other cities around the country. And the response to this is not what you'd hope. Let's put it that way. And so my new mission is to galvanize a response. And that response can look like a lot of things. I have some ideas that I lay out in this book. So I'm going to rewind now to what I'm here to talk about, which is Venture for America Philadelphia. So Venture for America Philadelphia, anyone here go to law school? A few of you. I did as well. And so this was the problem that was nagging at me circa 2009, 2010, which is that we have a lot of bright people in this country who were heading to professional services firms and not many who are becoming entrepreneurs or working at startups in cities around the country. I resembled this. I went to work at Davis Polk, which is a Wall Street firm, was there for 5 months, and then left to start a .com that did not work out. So I found out firsthand that entrepreneurship is much, much harder than school. I was pretty good at school, not so good at starting a company. But the way I got better was that I worked for a more experienced entrepreneur for several years and then grew and evolved and eventually became the CEO of a company that became the largest GMAT prep company in the country. It's called Manhattan Prep. And so I personally taught the analyst classes at Goldman Sachs, McKinsey, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, and I saw all of these young, smart people doing the same things year after year, many of whom were not that excited about their work. And so I said, we really could improve on this in some way. So here's some of the data. As you can tell, I'm a little bit of a data guy. So these were the stats from Harvard in 2014. They haven't changed that much, though big tech now belongs in the top level. But you're looking at about 15% heading to all of the major paths. And this is true not just of Harvard, but it's true of Penn and every other national university, where if you head to one of these schools, the odds of you heading to Wall Street, heading to Silicon Valley, becoming a management consultant, or heading to law school, all very high. And what that means is that they converge in one of 6 cities: New York, San Francisco, Boston, DC, LA, Chicago. So here in Philadelphia, you all know this, you've lived it, and you understand what's at stake, which is where the talent goes, is where the economic flows come from in the future. So I started an organization to change this. I donated $200,000 of my own in 2011. Our budget was $200,000, so it goes to show how many friends I had. This year, our budget's around $6 million. We've grown every year. This is me talking through it with President Obama, or as I should say, former President Obama, which makes me a little sad. So Venture for America has taken flight. What we do is we take recent college graduates. How many of you all have children? I have 2 kids myself. All right, keep your hand up if your kids are college age. All right, fantastic. So talking to you, literally, we have parents refer people to Venture for America all the time, so you should really check this out. If you get into Venture for America, it's highly selective. This year we'll have something like 2,500 applicants for 200 to 300 spots. But if you get in, we train you with McKinsey and IDEO and Flatiron School and others, and then we send you to work at a startup in one of 18 cities, and at the end of 2 years in the trenches of a startup, we have a small seed fund and an accelerator to help you launch companies. So this is a national entrepreneurship fellowship program around the country. How many of you guys had heard of Venture for America prior to my talking? All right, so good, I'm doing some good here. So now you know Venture for America, the world-changing entrepreneurship fellowship program. So we're in these 18 cities. Philadelphia is, I would say, our largest, and in some ways, our most successful city. And I'll talk about why that is. But we're in 18 cities around the country. We do not operate in New York, Silicon Valley, Austin, Seattle, so I would say, or Boston. So I'd say Philadelphia might be the most prominent city in the country for VFA placements. About 17% of our alums start companies. You'll meet 2 of them in a moment. We've helped create about 2,800 jobs. And here in Philadelphia, we've had over 100 people come in. 78 are still here. There are 52 companies here in Philly that have hired fellows. How many of you all operate companies here in Philadelphia? So you might be able to benefit from this. We are handpicking some of the smartest, most enterprising, most energetic young people in the country, and they want to come work for you and with you to develop into people like yourselves. One of the things we believe at Venture for America is that you can't be what you don't see. So what we do is we have them look up to you for a couple of years, and then they evolve to become founders and leaders. And that's what's happened with Mukja and Sam Roberts and other people here in Philadelphia who've started companies. If they don't become founders, they become leaders and managers. Some of you might recognize some of these companies, like Jornaya and Charge It Spot and Guru, who are now huge Venture for America fans and believers. And if they're not working at their startups, they tend to start organizations because we're recruiting or we're recruiting people who are going to become founders. So even as they're working at a startup, often they start nonprofits on the side, as Devin, Darren, and Dylan have here in Philadelphia. I love Philly because it's been so successful for us. So this is an image from the accelerator we've had here in Philadelphia the last 2 years, 7 companies each year hosted by Josh Koppelman and First Round Capital. And because Philadelphia is so supportive, many of these entrepreneurs have just stayed here to build their companies. So unbeknownst to you, there's been this pipeline of smart young people who come into Philly and then take root with their companies. They employ now about 30 people. So I mentioned Josh, David Edelman. Here are some of the people that we work with here in Philadelphia. It's a great, phenomenal group. And then here are some of our heavyweight supporters around the country. Jeff Weiner, the CEO of LinkedIn, has been an advisor from day one. Dan Gilbert, if you're sports fans, he's actually a great guy. He got a bad rap because of the entire Comic Sans LeBron thing. But I've been with Dan like 10 times and can't say enough about him. So we have really incredible support around the country from people that know that what we need to do is create more entrepreneurs like yourselves, more young people that become builders for the future. Is Keenan here in the audience? Keenan? Keenan, come on up, Keenan. So this is Keenan. So this is Keenan, who runs Venture for America Philadelphia. So if you're an operator who says, hey, maybe I want to get involved with this, if you're a service provider, if you're a philanthropist, I love philanthropists, they're my second favorite type of person after entrepreneur. So come find Keenan, she'll be here today and tomorrow, and she can help make that happen. So we're like a real, flesh and blood breathing. I think this microphone works, Keenan, so just come on up and just say hello very briefly.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you. Like Andrew said, my name is Keenan Corrigan, and if you're interested in talking about our fellowship program, hiring a fellow, or supporting us in any way, please reach out. My email is keenan@ventureforamerica.org.
Yeah, all right, thanks, Keenan. So Keenan's a rock star, went to Duke, has worked in nonprofit fundraising for a number of years. And so some of our national supporters, I'm going to talk about the fellow founders now, and then I'll close with the national supporters. So let's welcome up 2 BFA alums who've started companies here in Philadelphia, Evan Brandoff and Naz Danis. Come on up, guys. Yeah. My gosh. It's like, who is this person? Why are there real-life human beings coming up? But come on up. So to sing their praises, Evan Brandoff, 2013 Venture for America alum who spent 2 years at an e-commerce, well, it's like more of like a media company in Detroit, and then was part of the accelerator and then started a company called Leagueside, which I'll tell you about. And Naz studied architecture at Barnard, spent 2 years in Miami, and then also came here for the accelerator. So they will tell you a little bit about their companies. I don't know if you guys have a mic or if you guys have to use this too. I'm not sure what that.
Yeah. Has anyone here, show of hands, heard of Leagueside before? Few hands, and now all of you have, so this is exciting. Put simply, Leagueside, we connect youth sports leagues across the country with regional and national sponsors. So think Little League Baseball, soccer. We've got a network of over 4,000 of them across the country and connect them with national sponsors, including Uber, New York Life Insurance, and Chipotle. The Philadelphia community has been so welcoming. Like Andrew said, we started here about 2.5 years ago. Now we've got a team of 15. Here in Philly, we'll be over 20 by the end of the year, and we're in the process of raising a $1.5 million seed round. So I know a bunch of you are investors. I'll be here for a little bit if you're interested in talking. And then Naz.
Hello, I'm Naz. I was born and raised in Istanbul, Turkey, and then joined Venture for America after college. So I moved Philly a year ago to start my company, Meal, which is a chatbot company for helping you go to bed earlier. Me and my co-founder were both interested in kind of self-improvement and realized that a lot of people who had a bunch of apps to kind of organize their lives weren't really using those apps. So we created something that runs entirely on SMS. And Philly's been great for us because it's a great city to kind of put your head down and work. But also, whenever you need help, you don't have to go through all these hoops to kind of get in touch with the people that you need to get in touch with. People are so supportive, and you can just go to someone you know and say, hey, do you know someone in such and such field? And they'll say, oh yeah, I know this person, let me just connect you. And we're just really grateful to be here, so thank you.
All right, Yeah, let's give them a round of applause, guys. All right. So, I gotta say, it's like I'm like the Asian godfather now to like hundreds of young entrepreneurs in 18 cities around the country, and it's a lot of fun. So here are some of the people that support us nationwide. A lot of incredible organizations have come aboard over the last number of years. So those of you who hadn't heard of Venture for America, hopefully you're thinking, wow, I did not know this organization existed, but it's doing stuff I believe in, which is training young people to be entrepreneurs, like Evan and Naz, starting companies here in Philadelphia. The Venture for America community understands that you need innovation to happen in places around the country, not just the usual New York, Silicon Valley, Boston, et cetera. And Philadelphia has been so successful for us that, as you saw, almost 80% of fellows and alums are still here. You are our Silicon Valley in the sense of this is where many of the fellows come to start their businesses after they spend 2 years in the trenches of another company. So I've got a few minutes, and I'm going to do something a little bit unorthodox, which is I'd love to take some questions because I just love hearing what people are reacting to and thinking. Does anyone have any questions about anything I've talked about? War on normal people, Venture for America, being Asian? Joke on the last one, that'd be a pretty bad question. From the Asian guy at the front. Yep.
Oops. Hey Andrew. Hey everyone, my name is Zilong, or Z. I'm with Weezy Best. We are building a co-living community for entrepreneurs to help them to co-grow, co-live, and co-work together. And so I want to understand your perspective on the biggest challenge to promote entrepreneurship and innovation in a city like Philadelphia or cities like Detroit, where you see most of that traditional industry is more not innovation related. So thank you.
So I'm a huge talent guy in the sense that, like, one of the jokes I told in Silicon Valley is like, if you guys all moved to Detroit tomorrow without your money, what would happen? And the answer is that the next day the money would follow them because if you took all the talent of Silicon Valley, the people would be like, oh, we should just move Sand Hill Road to 8 Mile and then try and make snowmobiles that, make people comfortable. So to me, Philadelphia has so many assets in terms of national universities, and a lot of people come here. But a lot of those people also leave thereafter. I was just talking to one of my colleagues, Rachel Greenspan, who's here in Philadelphia, and she was talking about how you can actually buy a 2-bedroom apartment here for like the same level that it might cost you to buy a studio in New York or San Francisco. There are a lot of structural advantages, but it's all a war for talent, in my opinion, that the talent is being competed over at universities and companies around the country. And in order for Philadelphia to get its fair share, Philadelphia needs to compete in the same way. That's what Venture for America tries to do on your behalf, which is we go to colleges around the country. They're getting wined and dined by Google and Goldman Sachs and the rest of it. And we say, hey, if you want to start a business, come with us. We will train you. We'll give you a lot of the things that you think you need to go to a big company for. And then we will bring you to Philadelphia and then connect you with mentors and maybe even invest money in you. So one of my rules is that it always has to involve money. You need to put your money where your mouth is. So in our case, we have raised a small, like $1 to $2 million fund that we then use to seed these investors. And then people like Josh, who's involved with that fund, then come in after and try and present a runway for them. So my message would be, if you want entrepreneurship to happen, you have to compete for talent, and then you have to support it, provide leadership and resources, and then make it real. It's hard to make these things real, because even if you do everything right, the majority of them fail. And so, you need to have a long time horizon and a lot of persistence and grit and understanding that failure is baked in. Yes?
Hi, I'm Gerald Lopez. I'm a director of business development at the Singh Center for Nanotechnology at the University of Pennsylvania, where nanotechnology happens in Philly. My question to you is, with the startups that I've seen, and I'm a graduate of Georgia Tech, got my PhD there, and even now in UPenn, there's about a 10% success rate that I see with startups, right? And what you've done here is that it seems like you closed that Death Valley between, basic research and innovation. I'm curious, with the companies that you started or helped seed, how many of them, what's the success rate that you're seeing now that you're providing this bridge across this Death Valley?
Yeah. So between 15 and 20% of our alums have started a business, and of those that have gotten started, the majority are still in business today. So our success rate to date, it's too soon to say, truthfully, but we have some outsized successes, including companies that have raised millions. And Evan is being humble, but Evan's already doing 7-figure revenues in year 3 of business. They have clients like Applebee's and Chipotle and HomeAway and others. So some of them are succeeding at very high levels, and the failure rate's been pretty low, but it's early, so I wouldn't want to speak to that. Though we are cherry picking. Another one of the things we say is, that there is no fairness in any of this stuff. Like, we're not trying to make the world fair, we're trying to make the world unfair for our alums. Like, if you joined Venture for America, you did a high character thing and probably turned down more money as a 22-year-old. So we're going to try and weight the scales in your favor when you start a business, and we're not shy about that. So our success rate right now is over 50%, but that's not sustainable. One more quick question. And again, so Evan, Naz, and, oh yeah, come on up, grab the mic. And Keenan, please do reach out, especially to Keenan. Her email's up here. We're considering moving Venture for America's training camp from Providence to Philadelphia. And if you want to make that happen, please do reach out to Keenan. You can imagine an army of 300 of these young people training here and then having many of them stay. Yeah, last question, let's do it.
Yeah, hi, my name is Mina Soriel. I'm with ImCare Biotech. We're developing a novel biomarker to detect liver cancer earlier, and we've won phase 1 and phase 2 funding, over $2 million of non-dilutive funding. My question is, how did you put your board together? From my understanding, that's one of the most important things that we could do as a startup, and I'm just curious how you got in touch with them and put that impressive board together.
Sure, so it's different for a nonprofit and a for-profit. But I think some of the dynamics are similar. So a lot of people take cues from whoever the initial members are. So what you need is one anchor cool board member. And then it gets so much easier after that. After that, you point to that person and be like, he's on board. And then you're like, really? And then that board members. So that's the challenge, is finding that anchor or lead. And that can be out of a personal relationship. Again, there's no fairness. If the person's your distant uncle, great. As long as people would be excited to join them. And then after you get that person, then you have to sort of balance the group based upon, you don't want a bunch of big names who don't take your calls. Like, there are some people that will actually add value and get in the trenches with you, so you end up trying to build a bit of a constellation. But truthfully, it's that first person. The other thing I would say is that it depends largely on what you're working on. If what you're working on is exciting, even if you don't know the big deal person, they'll get interested. And also, don't take no's personally. There are a lot of people that said no to Venture for America initially that said yes a little bit later on. So again, this is Keenan's info. Love you, Philadelphia. I'm Andrew Yang. I'm the founder of Venture for America. Please do check us out. There's also a movie about us on Netflix right now called Generation Startup. So if you have college-age kids who want to see 6 young entrepreneurs try and build businesses over a year and a half, go check that out, Generation Startup. All right, thank you all very much. Have a great day here.
That was great. Andrew, that was fantastic. And just to be clear, when he built Venture for America back in 2011, it wasn't with the intention to have Philly be the #1 site. So we've just submitted, as many other cities did, for Amazon, and one of the things hopefully you all came to a greater realization if you read the press is that Philly has many of the pieces for a strong entrepreneurial community. You talk about the universities, you talk about the entrepreneurs, and it has a lot of great mid and large size companies. So our next speaker hails from one of those. And oh, by the way, a lot of people whose companies aren't even based here choose to live here. This is an individual that fits that mold. So our third speaker is a recognized thought leader. He's a thought leader in the life sciences industry. He is a trusted advisor to many executives of top firms in that industry. And his company is a 10-year-old success story, still in the making. They're currently an $8 billion plus public software company where he is responsible for all of their major accounts. How did he get that job? He's collaborative. He's worked very extensively with all of those clients to develop those relationships, and it has resulted in much success of the company. Please join me in welcoming Dan Goldsmith.
So
it's good to be here. I really enjoyed what Laura and Andrew had to say. I got to admit, it was interesting. I was thinking a lot about my journey and the things that I've been through in my career. There were a few things that resonated specifically. I started my career, I tell people I had a full career as a management consultant, and then I became an entrepreneur. So as a result, my family still has no idea what I do. And I live out of Philadelphia. I was born and raised in Chester County. I still live there today, about a mile where I grew up. I love this area, but I work for a company based out of Silicon Valley, Viva Systems. And it's been an interesting journey. And a lot of times along that path, I felt a little bit like a fish out of water. But I also feel really honored and privileged to be part of this really wonderful $8 billion startup. And I've been with Viva now for 8 years, and we still refer to ourselves as a startup company. I joined the company when we were about 35 people. And Dean, that was a very nice introduction, by the way, thank you. And we had no idea what we were doing. Now, I'll talk through the Viva story a little bit, but I tell people all the time that when you look at Viva from the outside, it looks like we were very calculated and we really knew what we were doing. But for any of you who have been part of a startup, you'll know it's very chaotic. We actually had no idea what we were doing. And especially in those early days, you know, we had to figure out what fit right and what felt right and take sort of those cues from the market and the partnerships that we've had, the partnerships we built, our customers, and working closely with our customers. So, you know, now that it's 10 years later from when we started the company, and we were very fortunate with the success we've had, it's a lot clearer the decisions we made, the methodologies that we've created, and the things that we've done that have helped build that success. But we still refer to ourselves as a startup. So in my mind, actually, being a startup or being an entrepreneurial, or having an entrepreneurial culture is less about, you know, the number of employees or the size or the funding or whatever. But it actually is about that state of mind and that culture you build within a company. And I think within Viva, we've had a good track record, and we still have that growth-minded entrepreneurial mindset and culture. As Dean mentioned, I am the EVP of Global Accounts. I've had 3 major roles within Viva. I started out leading our international expansion, running our international business end-to-end, and then I was our Chief Strategy Officer for some time. If you talk to our CEO, Peter Gaster, he'll tell you that, you know, Dan Goldsmith is the guy that when there's a giant impossible hill to climb or a burning fire, you know, you point Dan at that thing. And I sort of like that. So it's been a lot of fun at Viva. You've all seen a safe harbor statement before. There's some things I'm going to talk about here that are more future looking, and obviously plans can change in that regard, but that's enough on that. Viva as a company, as I mentioned, is a 10-year-old company. We're 2,200 employees, just over 2,200 employees now, and we have over 550 customers. The majority of that growth has been organic growth, sort of born out of Viva and our engineering and our creation. And we're a global company as well. One of the things we're really proud of is that we explain it as a ground-up culture within the organization. But we had an employee meeting. We do an employee kickoff every year. And a few years ago, we had an employee kickoff in Europe. I was running Europe at the time. And we had about 300 people in the meeting, including our founders and CEOs and everything else, as well as people who were just joining the company. We asked the 10 people who were newest to the company and the 10 people who had been with the company longest why they joined Viva. And one of the interesting things is the universal sort of commonality between all of them is they talked about they joined Viva because they saw what Viva could be and not just what Viva was today. And that made me really happy because we were 5 years or so into, at least my tenure at Viva, about seven years into the company overall, but still having that mindset and that culture where the people coming into the company feel as excited about the future of the company as the people who have been there for a long time, I think is pretty unique. We IPO'd a few years ago, and that was quite an interesting process. I'm happy to share more detail later on that. But we do some very basic things. We're actually, at the end of the day, a very basic company. We build cloud-based software for the life sciences industry. So very clear market, life sciences industry, cloud-based software, and there's an evolution of of cloud that we'll talk about as well. We've created implementation services to support our customer success. We figured if we're going to make the stuff, we better make sure the stuff is implemented and used properly. And then a big key to our success has been this partner ecosystem that has grown quite rapidly over time. We've actually been quite selective with our partner ecosystem. Some of our partners are sitting in this room today, so it's very good. Our vision as a company has changed as well. Actually, when I joined the company, the name of the company was Verticals on Demand. Does anyone here remember Verticals on Demand? So we had the wrong name, the wrong color for the company, and we had the wrong vision. Our vision of the company when we started was to build multiple industry verticals on top of Salesforce.com. But we realized pretty quickly that the life sciences industry was big enough to build a fairly sizable company around, and the more verticals you focus on, the less vertically focused you are. You lose your identity. So actually, within the early days of the company, we changed our name to Viva. We adopted the color orange, and you'll see that everywhere within Viva. And we adopted a new vision. And the vision in those days was really straightforward. We wanted to be the pervasive provider of software as a service solutions to the life sciences industry. That was our vision when I joined the company. And as we've grown and gotten more of a strategic seat at the table with our customers and with the industry, we've evolved our vision. So our vision as a company now is really to build the industry cloud for life sciences. We essentially want to be the operating company for the life sciences industry and drive efficiencies, drive new ways of working, create a landscape and a fabric where all companies within that ecosystem can contribute to a new way of working. We believe very much in our values. So customer success, employee success, and speed. Every one of our employees knows that and understand what it means, and we really live by that. The decisions we make from top to bottom really live by those values. And we're also very cognizant of how companies grow, not becoming complacent, staying humble, and remembering the things that got us to where we are. So let me talk about a little bit more about Viva. So when we talk about the industry cloud and we talk about the partner to the life sciences industry, we really look at things in sort of what are these large block areas right now for life sciences. We all are probably familiar with SAP and what SAP has done for the ERP space, and they've really created that ecosystem for the ERP space within the market and within life sciences as well. We started out focused on the commercial space, the sales and marketing space within life sciences, and we've become a pretty pervasive provider in that space, and that's been the growth engine of the company. But now the growth engine of the company is really building that middle block there around the drug development systems, the R&D aspects of a life sciences company. And we have an integrated vision for our capabilities and applications and the products that we offer there to support that ecosystem. But Viva, at its heart, has two fundamental engines for growth. The first is commercial cloud, which really got us to where we are today. We built our first product off of the Salesforce.com platform, and we've continued to expand that commercial cloud concept, fulfilling sort of the sales and marketing needs for life sciences companies in this area. But we also made a very strategic decision. Shortly after I joined the company, we made the decision to not only break into a new market, focus on content management, and there's a lot that we do around sort of market selection, but we decided to engineer a product from scratch on our own. We had people in our company who had been in the content management space for over 20 years. They were thought leaders and experts, and they thought we were crazy. And this, I give Peter a lot of credit, our CEO, on this. He made the decision that if we're going to do something right and we're going to do it well, even though it's very, very hard and unprecedented, we're going to do this, we're going to engineer it, we're going to do it a different way. Vault is now our growth engine for the company. The future of Viva, if you look over the next 5 or so years, Vault is where the growth of the company is going to happen. I'll show you some of those financials in a second. When you think about Viva and you distill down the last 10 years of our learnings and sort of where we've applied our focus within the organization, it really boils down to 4 primary things. First is we are a company very unique in this industry and market with cloud technology companies. We've had strong growth combined with strong profitability. That's something that happened naturally. We didn't curb or shortcut any of the decisions that we made in the way we do things because we wanted to achieve a certain balance with that. It sort of happened organically in that way, and we believe that driving that customer success, driving rapid adoption, and having good products really helped put us in that financial position. The other thing is big strategic markets. One of the things I believe many companies and entrepreneurs sort of fail is where they fail is they get distracted very easily. They start with a clear vision and idea of what they want to do, and then over time, very rapidly, as customers or other entities or people come in and ask them to do things or go over here, hey, what if we stretch our definition and vision in this way? They become distracted, and you end up with a handful of sort of small markets that don't necessarily make sense. And if you actually went back to your original vision and thesis, you probably would have been a lot more successful. So Viva picks big strategic markets that make sense for us, and we focus on those markets relentlessly. We execute within that market to be the best product, the best organization, the best customer success within those markets, which leads us to customer success. I'll talk about our market evolution in a second, but the best thing that we can do is make our customers successful. In turn, the worst thing that we can do is have customers with negative experiences with Viva. So we obsess over customer success, and we would rather slow down our business to make sure we take the time to drive customer success with those focused customers than sort of rapidly expand and get out beyond our skis. So that's embedded in everything we do. And then cloud innovation. As we see the evolution of cloud, 10 years ago, we were like the only cloud company on the block in life sciences. We pioneered the idea and really helped get the industry comfortable with the idea that they could put this precious data and this protected data in the cloud. That's no longer an issue anymore. We talked about the idea of rapid innovation using cloud technologies, and we all experience that as consumers, but how does that apply to a business environment, especially an environment that's highly regulated? And then as we look forward around cloud innovation, we think there's still a lot of opportunities. Right? I bet a lot of you in this audience are thinking about AI and data science and how we use sort of big data in this world. That's actually, in our opinion, the next evolution of cloud. We have 80% of the industry's commercial data flowing through our cloud. The potential of harvesting that data and using it to make the industry smarter is absolutely tremendous. Let's talk a little bit about market entry strategy and what we do and how we've been successful in this area. It's actually quite simple when you read it. It's a lot harder to execute within this model. Viva selects our markets very carefully. We tend to do well in markets where there's somewhat of a defined market. There's a technology or a player that is legacy on-prem and has sort of lost the pace of innovation, and a market that's a big market where there's a business problem or business need driving change. So when we go to market, we announce, we launch a product, and we take the mindset of freezing a market. We want the market to know that we are putting our stake in the ground around that market, and then we select early adopters with every single product of ours. So 8 years ago, we had one product, and that was our primary growth product around CRM. We now have 28 products in our portfolio. Most of those products are built off of that Vault platform I mentioned. But those early adopters, we select about 5 to 8 companies with every product we launch, and we will not take any other customers until we know that we can get those early adopters up and running and successful. And there's a lot of advantages of being an early adopter with Viva, commercial benefits, first to market benefits, and being able to sort of shape our product and partner with us. And what that yields when we focus on that, we are able to drive success within that market of those early adopters is reference selling. Everything we've done to be successful with our growth is absolutely off of reference selling. Now, part of that is the nature of the life sciences market. So for any of you who work within the life sciences space or with pharmaceutical companies, it's an industry where the top 20 largest companies within the market represent about 60 to 70% of the revenue and revenue opportunity. So, getting one of those wrong would be bad. Getting one of those right and have them be evangelical and be a reference for us is absolutely essential, and that's been a key to our growth. Building a best-of-breed product obviously underpins everything. We want to be best-of-breed on that. So here's a little bit of history. I won't go through this in detail. I want to watch the time. But these are the products that we've launched over the last 10 years. And one of the things I want to bring your attention to is Pharma CRM was our growth product. That brought us through our IPO, including our global expansion and our global footprint. But back in 2011 or so, a little earlier than that, we decided to engineer Viva Vault, as I alluded to. PromoMats is built on Vault, QualityDots, submissions, eTMF, approved emails on our CRM platform. But if you look at this rapid innovation from 2015 till now, so the last 3 years, everything is built essentially on that Vault platform. Any good company, any good technology company that's successful has a platform that they can build off of. And that has significantly accelerated our ability to innovate and go into new markets. And the Vault platform is quite unique. It's a combination of unstructured data and structured data with rapid development. But it took that long And we were able to seed the market with some of these key markets like ProMats and Qualities, but it took that long to sort of mature and get the platform right to a point where we can really use it as our primary development platform. And there's also an interest over time where that can live within our partner ecosystem and driving new solutions through our partner ecosystem. Let me get to some of the financials. So for those of you who do not know the Viva story from a financial perspective, I mentioned before that we've benefited from a unique combination of growth and profitability. So this shows you over the past 7 years the Viva story, and our recent guidance was given around $675 million that we'll do in revenue and license revenue this year with an operating income of in excess of $200 million. So this is a pretty phenomenal story, especially when I distinctly remember 8 years ago buying the laptops for the first 10 employees in Europe in a department store in Barcelona on my own credit card. So this is sort of surreal in terms of the growth that we've had, but we remind ourselves a lot of that culture that we've created in that growth mindset. We set our goals, let me go back for a second. We've set our goals for growth with our 2020 plan. Our 2020 plan is we want to be, there's really 3 fundamentals to our 2020 plan. First and foremost, from a financial perspective, by the end of 2020, we want to be a company that is generating over $1 billion in revenue a year in license. We want to be a company that's still growing, and we want to be a company that's still Viva. So again, those are our goals. We're now starting to talk about 2025, and we have a scorecard that we look at that we believe will take us on the path to get there. Part of that is 20% average year-over-year growth, and we're well on that path right now. So we look forward to 2020, and we're starting to plan even beyond that. But the market and the selection of market is very important. I think both Laura and Andrew alluded to this. One of the things that we talk about is a bad market will trump a great product any day. So when Viva goes through market selection and understanding size of markets and market opportunity, and also what's in our DNA as a company. So there are actually some very good markets that we've passed up over the years because we knew that we did not have the DNA in our company to execute on those markets. So that's a very important factor as well. But when we look at the life sciences market as well, for those of you who do not know, it's a $1.7 trillion market with a 6% growth rate. And it's a market that's ripe for innovation and transformation. So those of you familiar with life sciences is one of the industries that is behind in terms of digital disruption and digital change. There's lots of M&A activity. It's a scientific-oriented industry that's also focused on technological advances. So it's been a great industry for us to focus on, but there's still a lot of opportunity. And this is how we look at our total addressable market size. So I talked to you a little bit about commercial cloud and that being sort of our first primary growth engine. That's about a $3 billion market opportunity for the markets that we're in, as well as sort of the expanded adjacent markets in life sciences. Vault, interestingly enough, as a platform and as the applications we build on top of Vault represent about a $4 billion market. And then we've actually taken, and I won't talk about it much today, but we've actually taken that platform and taken our first steps outside of the life sciences industry to work with other industries. You know, we're working with a top 5 CPG company now on a Vault program around Vault quality, and that's been a really interesting endeavor for us. Just so you know, when Viva thinks about going into markets, we treat every single market like a startup as well. So there's 2, maybe 3 people in the company that actually think about what we're doing in life sciences and outside of life sciences, both. And that's Peter, our CEO, and 2 people on the management team. But here's where we stand. So we're, with our guidance at about $670 million now, we still have a lot of market opportunity. So we're excited to do this, but we know we need to continue to execute well, navigate and pick those right markets to get to that $1 billion run rate in 2020. To give you some flavor around sort of how we've penetrated the market and what that looks like product by product, our Viva CRM product really is the commercial cloud. And we've, again, been very fortunate with adoption. Over the last 10 years, we've gotten to a point where we have over 280 life sciences pharmaceutical customers. 19 of the top 20 are utilizing our CRM platform. And most of those companies are using 3 or more products, about 2.5 or 3 or more products within that commercial cloud from Viva. And then you can look at sort of the progression of how we've done this. And you look at the growth of something like Vault Clinical, for example. Vault Clinical has actually grown faster than Viva CRM. So when you look at Viva as a company, our growth rate actually hasn't slowed down. When you look at it sort of market by market, it's actually accelerated. Okay. So those are some of the things we look at. And the partnerships with our customers are super important. We have a customer summit every year, one focused on sales and marketing teams and one focused on R&D teams. They're actually here in Philadelphia, so we're trying to support Philadelphia. And we're very proud of sort of the customers that partner with us to help us evolve our products, evolve the market. And over that time, they've been fantastic partners in helping Viva grow. But there's also an amazing partner ecosystem, okay? Services partners, and it's interesting for me to look at how much this partner ecosystem has grown. We've actually been quite selective in these partners, and we want to make sure that partners that we work with share that same philosophy around customer success and driving that right behavior and culture. We have a number of services partners, but it's not all. We've learned from some of the previous technology providers in this space from the 90s and early 2000s where they sort of tried to partner with everybody because they thought that was a great way to go to market, but in fact they actually lost touch with their customers and thus lost market share. And we don't want to do that. So we have very tight relationships with our partners. One thing being very unique though that I wanted to call out here is our agency partner program. Our agency partner program, we knew that we are not a creative agency. So although we create a lot of the digital channels for life sciences companies to interact with physicians, we knew that we couldn't be a digital agency. We couldn't be a creative agency. There's a lot of diversity within that market. Businesses selecting those digital agencies. But what we created was an agency program. So we take on the burden of sort of educating, training, and building up those agency relationships so they can be effective in delivering creative content through our platforms. That agency program now has over 400 members to that program. And our company and our technology would not be able to be adopted as quickly if it weren't for sort of investing in and building those competencies within these partners. So in summary, from a business model perspective, there's a lot I could talk about Viva, and I'd be happy to take questions later, and I know we're going to have some of the panel conversation here in a little bit, but I wanted to highlight 4 things that really live within our business model that have affected Viva's trajectory and path over the past 10 years. First is being a strategic partner, and part of that is being humble. How do we partner with companies, big and small, in the right ways and building that right customer, and being a strategic partner to the industry. So beyond just the products we create, we've actually created 2 industry collaboration groups now, one called Align Biopharma, one called Align CRO, where we are building industry standards. We are also looking forward now to how can we harness this data and harness this technology and do new things to really evolve and support the industry in different ways, partner with regulatory agencies, partner with different entities across the ecosystem. Our focused market selection and our focused R&D spend, all of our engineering most of our engineering happens out of the Bay Area, and we have some satellite development offices in Toronto and Budapest, actually. But we're very focused on keeping that internal and focused around that spend and not doing things that are shelfware or flashware that really don't make sense. Higher customer lifetime value. This is a positive and negative. So the positive is, as we introduce new products and be more integrated and can be more strategic, that sort of wallet share and that increased value with companies large and small grows, but we also have a target on our back. Right? We have more conversations with companies about the fact that we are one of their, or if not their, largest budget line item on their budget, and so we've had to pivot and act and engage differently, and I can't emphasize enough sort of the reference selling. If you keep innovating and you keep making your customers happy, then it really creates the market and the tailwinds for you. So with that, I know we're going to get a panel session, so maybe not questions now. I want to thank you all for allowing me to be here and talk to you today.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help us in welcoming RCCB's John Royer.
It's alright.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am John Royer from Royer, Cooper, Cohen, Braunfeld, RCCB Law. RCCB empowers ambition. We're lawyers who think and act like entrepreneurs and business persons because we are. We're based in the Philadelphia region. We have offices in Conshohocken, Philadelphia, New York. We represent startups, emerging growth companies, and middle market companies as one of our core focus areas, and their investors and management teams and owners.
Our core practice areas are corporate and securities, including M&A, capital raising transactions, licensing, technology transactions, et cetera, intellectual property, litigation, commercial disputes, and real estate, tax, private client services, and bankruptcy and restructuring. We've been a longtime supporter of PACT and a sponsor of many PACT events, including this Capital Conference. This year, we're once again very pleased to be the co-sponsor of the cocktail reception this evening with our good friends, Eisner Amper. That begins at 5:30 in the Liberty Foyer. Now, this conference is off to a great start again this year, and I wish everyone a very productive event. Right now, I want to invite everyone to network during the networking break for the next half an hour or so until the next session begins. So thank you.